Our guest today is my friend Jackie, who was born in Chicago and now lives in Orlando, USA. She lived in Brazil for 10 years and fell in love with the country. Her husband Victor is Brazilian and they have 2 kids, Leo and Gabriel.
Jackie has a bachelor's degree in secondary education in Spanish, a master's degree in school counseling, and her YouTube channel, Ask Jackie, is now one of the most relevant English teaching channels in Brazil. Check out our conversation.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, blah, blah, spot.
Oh, hello and welcome, Jackie. We're super happy to have you here. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm even happier to be here with you guys. It's an honor.
A Jackie já é minha amiga de longa data, né? Então a gente tá aqui nessa conversa diferente. Eu tenho umas perguntas bem específicas pra Jackie, porque eu conheço ela bem, e o Fábio, que não conhece também tem umas perguntas muito legais que eu acho que a audiência vai gostar de saber, né, Fábio?
Certamente. Well, first of all, nice to meet you, Jackie.
Nice to meet you too, Fabio.
Thank you, so good to see you here. Bom, português. Eu quero mudar um pouquinho pro português, porque a gente vai falar em português, mas a gente vai falar em inglês também, bastante, tá? A gente quer saber o seguinte, primeira coisa que veio à nossa cabeça com uma pergunta legal para te fazer é por que o Brasil e por que aprender português?
Na verdade, isso não foi uma coisa que eu planejei. Era mais ou menos uma sugestão de uma amiga minha. Ela queria ir para o Brasil para conhecer o carnaval. E eu queria viajar, fugir da neve. Eu sou de Chicago. E carnaval cai em fevereiro, que é um mês que todo mundo tá de saco cheio do frio, da neve. Eu estava, nossa, eu vou para qualquer lugar, tanto faz. Vamos embora. E a gente planejou essa viagem e antes da viagem a gente decidiu fazer algumas aulas de português só para se divertir mesmo, para tentar falar um pouco enquanto a gente estava no Brasil. E nessa viagem eu me apaixonei pelo país, pelas pessoas. Eu também estava numa fase de vida. Eu acho que muita gente, não é só o lugar, é sua fase de vida mesmo. Eu era recém-solteira, eu não estava muito feliz com o meu emprego, estava com essa crise de será que eu vou continuar fazendo isso pro resto da minha vida? Será que eu fiz faculdade, mestrado só para fazer isso até me aposentar? A gente tem essas coisas que passam pela cabeça. E eu senti que eu não estava pronta para fazer isso. Eu queria fazer uma aventura, uma loucura, enquanto não tinha outras responsabilidades. E quando eu fui para o Brasil, eu já estava pensando em, claro, voltar para Chicago, mas depois voltar para a América Latina em geral, não sabia onde, para ficar um tempo. E quando eu voltei, eu saí de meu emprego, aluguei meu apartamento. Eu fui para o Brasil com a expectativa que eu ia viajar para vários países, para Argentina, Chile, Colômbia, sei lá. E quando eu cheguei, eu comecei a trabalhar dando aula de inglês. E eu conheci meu marido 2 semanas depois do que eu cheguei. E depois que eu conheci ele, eu não queria ficar viajando muito. Estava tudo apaixonada. E acabei ficando 10 anos no Brasil. Mas não era uma coisa que eu jamais... E, na verdade, se alguém tivesse falado para mim, você vai para o Brasil, vai ficar 10 anos, eu teria falado, de jeito nenhum, tá louco, não vou. E não era porque eu não estava, querendo fazer isso, mas... Não sei, eu não fazia parte de meus planos, entre aspas.
Eu te entendo completamente, porque se alguém me dissesse lá quando eu tinha 18 anos, tu vai morar em São Paulo e teu filho vai nascer em São Paulo.
Sim.
Eu falar, nada a ver, eu nunca quis morar em São Paulo. E eu tô aqui e eu amo São Paulo.
Sim,
entendeu? Então
sim.
eu acho que a vida vai nos levando, né?
Exatamente.
Mas eu fiquei curiosa pra saber o que especificamente fez tu te apaixonar. Tudo bem, se apaixonou pelo Brasil, mas... O que? Tem alguma coisa? São as pessoas? É o jeito? É o clima? O que mais te chamou a atenção? Fora o Vitor, né? Fora o marido.
Sim. Não, isso é uma pergunta muito boa. E é difícil, porque muitas vezes as pessoas perguntam, você tem saudade do quê? E eles dizem, do pão de queijo, do pizza. Mas eu acho que o Brasil tem uma energia tão humana, que é uma coisa que chamou a minha atenção. Aqui nos Estados Unidos, claro, tem um pouco de tudo, é difícil falar de forma geral, mas eu sinto falta dessa imperfeição eu quero dizer. Eu acho que o Brasil é um lugar que tem os dois extremos. Você vê a pobreza, a miséria que você não vê aqui nos Estados Unidos. Não estou dizendo que isso é bom ou ruim, mas isso, para mim, foi uma experiência muito boa, muito importante, porque eu cresci numa bolha. Então, a gente tem que entender que existe outro mundo. E as pessoas, as conversas são diferentes. Eu já percebi isso até morando aqui. Eu tenho muitas amigas brasileiras e a gente já começa conversando e já vai para uma conversa muito mais profunda. Não é uma conversa superficial que acaba acontecendo mais com os americanos de forma bem superficial. Mas eu não gosto desse small talk, esse bate-papo superficial. Eu gosto de realmente pessoas mais vulneráveis, abertas, sinceras. Isso eu acho que a gente consegue se aproximar muito mais um com o outro. E para mim, isso foi o grande motivo atrás de querer aprender o português. Eu não queria depender de um tradutor ou sempre ficar sem conseguir entender muito bem, porque você perde muita coisa. Eu queria muito saber as histórias, entender as piadas, conhecer a personalidade da pessoa, porque quando tem essa barreira de língua, a gente sente tipo, ok, eu consigo me comunicar, mas eles não me conhecem. Sabe, eu até senti assim com meu marido por muito tempo. Até no nosso casamento, eu lembro pensando, puxa, será que ele realmente me conhece? Porque estou falando em outra língua com ele. E não consigo me expressar da mesma maneira que eu me expresso em inglês. E agora já está mais fácil. Mas, não sei, é muito difícil explicar. Mas eu gosto da natureza, eu gosto das imperfeições, eu gosto do lado bem humano do Brasil.
Porque português é uma língua difícil, né? Não é uma
Muito
língua das
difícil.
mais fáceis.
Sim, é
E
bem
aí,
difícil.
como é que foi essa? Isso foi um desafio também, né? Acho que foi... Quanto tempo tu entendeu que não, agora eu tô conseguindo falar legal português? Quanto tempo demorou pra ti?
Não, ainda não sinto assim.
Não.
Come on.
Fala isso.
Por favor.
Tá muito bem.
Não,
Tá
mas
muito bem.
é uma coisa... não, tem dias que eu sinto que estou muito bem e outros dias que eu sinto, meu Deus do céu, não consigo falar nada. E eu acho que todo mundo passa por isso também. Vai ter
Eu
dias
não, meu
que...
inglês é perfeito, eu estou sempre maravilhosa. Mentira, eu me sinto exatamente assim, sabia? Até podcast que a gente já gravou aqui antes, quando não era em vídeo, eu falava, nossa, Fábio, hoje meu inglês estava travado. Por quê? Porque eu tava a semana inteira falando português.
Sim.
Então o nosso inglês, ele fica melhor, ou o teu português, quanto mais a gente fala, né? Quando ele tem que estar na
Sim.
cabeça, né?
Exatamente, exatamente. E também tem muito a ver com nossa ansiedade, se você está um pouco
sim.
ansiosa.
Eu não sou
se
nada
está
ansioso.
cansada.
O Fábio, ele tá sempre aqui. Uma loucura.
Capaz, como dizem aqui no Sul, capaz.
É difícil, mas vocês conseguem, tipo, falar, em tal número de anos e meses eu acordei um dia e falei,
Eu não consigo
hoje?
dizer.
Não tem isso. E isso é uma coisa que todo mundo pergunta. Quantos meses, quantos anos, até que... Eu não sei, é uma coisa tão gradual e por isso é muito importante que a gente foca nessas melhorias pequenas, essas conquistas pequenas, todos os dias e um dia você vai perceber... Puxa, eu entendi esse filme sem a legenda. Eu consegui falar com esse cara na fila do banco. E vai ser coisas pequenas que acontecem. Não é, acordei e sou fluente. Seria
Não
bom,
é.
mas...
Muitos alunos me perguntam, quando que você começou a pensar em inglês? Gente, eu nem penso sobre isso, eu nem sei. Até porque eu penso em imagens, em símbolos, eu não penso numa língua específica. Agora, quando eu parei de traduzir tudo aquilo que eu escuto, olha, eu acho que com certeza mais de ano, assim, 1 ano e meio, 2 anos de imersão na língua. Eu acho assim, ó, se as pessoas gostam de saber um prazo, eu vou dizer um prazo meu. Em 1 ano, eu conseguia me comunicar minimamente bem. Cheia de erros, cheia de travas, mas eu conseguia. Então, eu não tive a oportunidade de viajar com 1 ano de estudo, mas se eu viajasse, eu me viraria. Então, é isso. Agora, quando eu terminei de aprender, eu nem terminei, né, gente? Eu aprendo todos os dias.
E é uma coisa muito gradual e não tem problema nenhum em ser gradual. Eu acredito muito, aliás, naquilo que tem um desenvolvimento que não é a jato, entendeu? Eu tendo a pensar que quando a coisa ela demora um pouquinho, significa que ela está sendo muito mais bem aproveitada, né? É que nem emagrecer. A pessoa que emagrece, sei lá, 10 quilos num mês, ela vai ganhar 20 no outro, não adianta, tá? Então se você emagreceu 10 quilos num mês, você vai ganhar 20 no outro, tá? Desculpa, mas é isso que vai acontecer.
Coitado de quem tá nos
Eu
ouvindo.
sei porque
Não
isso já aconteceu comigo. Já aconteceu comigo várias vezes.
Mas as pessoas querem resultados rápidos. Isso eu acho que é o erro do ser humano. Eu quero fazer o mínimo esforço e eu quero os resultados mais rápidos possíveis. Mas eu acho que hoje até eu postei no Instagram porque eu estava pensando na importância de curtir a jornada, o processo. Porque, por exemplo, emagrecendo. Tudo bem, você conseguiu emagrecer e perdeu 10 quilos. Muitas vezes, você com 10 quilos a menos, você não sente, como você esperava sentir. Não é essa sensação de vitória, agora já consegui, já era, estou, super orgulhoso, feliz com esses resultados. Quando você se apaixona pelo processo, os resultados vêm e os resultados ficam com você. Exatamente. E o que eu gosto de aprender línguas, e na verdade qualquer outra coisa, não tem final. Não tem, cheguei no final, vou parar. Tem. É para sempre.
O processo
sempre
é legal,
tem mais coisas para aprender.
E eu acho muito importante isso que tu falou de enjoy the process. Isso eu falo sempre com os meus alunos também. E com as pessoas que me acompanham no YouTube. Se você não pegar gosto pelo estudo, é como se fosse a reeducação alimentar. Você vai fazer uma dieta e vai voltar. Se você não tiver esse hábito pra vida, né? E a mesma coisa o inglês. Você pode aprender um monte em 1 mês, 2 meses. Caramba, um monte de resultado. Mas foi chato. Foi chato, então tu parou. Volta, a gente esquece, a gente enferruja. Infelizmente, gente, nada é certo, né? A gente pode perder aquilo que a gente aprendeu, inclusive, né? Mas eu tenho curiosidade de saber também da tua jornada de aprendizado da língua portuguesa, qual foi a tua maior dificuldade, assim? Pode ter sido com uma questão de aprendizagem como um todo ou da língua, mas, nossa, a língua portuguesa é difícil, isso aqui. Tem alguma coisa?
Eu achei a fonética muito difícil. Os sons nasais, não, pão, mão, para mim foi muito difícil. Eu lembro tapando o nariz.
Não, que nem a gente aprendendo os sons do TH, né?
Isso.
É a mesma coisa.
Legal, então, o brasileiro para aprender inglês, ele gospe nos outros, né? E o americano para aprender português, ele fica sem ar. Genial!
Exatamente.
É mais ou menos isso.
Mas eu acho que a parte psicológica é difícil também, porque é um sofrimento, principalmente quando você mora em outro país e todo mundo fala essa língua e você é estrangeiro ou estrangeira e você não consegue se comunicar do jeito que você quer. Você sente, como uma criança, você sente, como burra, meu Deus, eu não consigo entrar nessa conversa. Então você passa por todas essas emoções negativas, mas eu acho que você tem que passar por isso, porque quanto mais você sofre, melhores resultados você vai ter no final. Então, abraça, fica frustrado, sabe que faz parte, não fica tão frustrado ou frustrada que você desiste. Isso só entenda que isso faz parte, na verdade, com qualquer coisa. Jogando esporte, vai ter dias que você joga tênis, perde, você quer jogar seu raquete, desistir de tudo, mas você não vai fazer isso. Você vai voltar no dia seguinte, vai treinar e é isso. Mas eu acho que hoje em dia, as pessoas, parece que muita gente até esquece disso. Esquece que não é sempre fácil. Você não vai ser motivado ou motivada todos os dias. E se você espera para se sentir motivada ou motivado para estudar, você nunca vai estudar. A gente nunca vai sair da cama se a gente depende de nossa motivação. Então, era isso.
É isso. E eu tô agora, I am wondering, será que a Jack sabe falar inglês mesmo, Fábio? Acho que é bom a gente testar, né? Vamos testar aqui pra ver se ela consegue.
That would be great. Let's do it.
Okay, so English time now.
Okay, thank goodness. Wow.
Now it's easier for you.
Now you're talking.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about YouTube. How did you start your channel, and what was your first video about?
Oh my gosh. So it's actually really embarrassing because when I started my YouTube channel, I knew nothing about YouTube. I never even subscribed to a channel or liked a video. I did not know what a thumbnail was. Like I was like zero knowledge of YouTube at the beginning. But I started it because I knew I wanted to have like an online course. That was my goal. We had a school in Campinas, like a physical school with students, and I always wanted to grow, but it's really hard having a physical, like brick and mortar business. There's a lot of expenses, you rely a lot on employees, it's very difficult. And I wanted to go into the online space. So I knew, all right, I have to build a digital presence in order to do that. So I started YouTube. The first video I have actually was somebody else who recorded it for me. It was about my work with Galinha Pintadinha.
Ah, you have to tell us about it.
What? I don't know that.
Yeah, you don't know that. So please tell us about your relation with Galinha Pintadinha. Lottie-dottie chicken.
The Lottie-dottie chicken.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was living in Campinas. That's where my husband is from. And the creators of the Galinha Pintadinha also live in Campinas.
They're Brazilians. I didn't know they were Brazilians. Can you believe that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just recently I learned that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're great people. Really great people. And I didn't even know really what the Galinha Pintadinha was. And all the songs are very traditional Brazilian children's songs. So I wasn't familiar with a lot of them. But they asked me to do like a test translating. It's not even translating, it's adapting the music from Portuguese to English.
Nice.
Which
Basically
is
recreating, right? Because it's very, very hard. It's not
That's
just about
so
translation.
hard, yeah.
So hard.
Yeah, but I feel like with children's songs, because it's the same lyrics repeating over and over again, it's very simple. Actually, the challenge for me was I was used to like translating like legal documents and people's resumes. So I had to really like simple baby words, but it has to have like the same number of syllables. The stress has to be the same. So that was like the first project I got involved in with the Galinha Pintadinha, and it was really, really fun.
I even know one of the lyrics, so it was by Jackie, probably. See my little yellow chickadee. He can fit her in my hand. Here in my hand.
It's fantastic. We have a songwriter here. That's great.
No, yeah, I am so proud of you, Jackie.
Wow.
You say, it was like a dab. It's very hard, Jack. You have to be very proud of yourself because it's one of the hardest jobs ever. Recreating a song, because you have to be faithful to the original lyrics, but at the same time, it has to rhyme. It has to have the same amount of syllables. Come on, it's very, very hard.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. I actually enjoyed it a lot. And I remember I would listen to the songs and try to find, I would go to websites that have like the rhyming words to try to find the words that rhyme together. And then I would have the song stuck in my head the entire day. But I had my son at the time, Gabriel. He was a baby. So I was like, all right, we're listening to the Galinha Pintadinha. And basically he would do it like, I would work with him, which was very nice. So I could just put it on and listen to it and write down some stuff that I thought would be a good adaptation.
No, I was wondering, is this a hit in the United States as well, as it is in Brazil or something?
It's not as big as it is in Brazil. I believe, Brazil I think is probably like number one. I think in Mexico and in Spain and some other Spanish-speaking countries, it's doing very, very well. In the U.S., I know they had it on Netflix a while ago. I think it was on Netflix, or maybe not. Maybe it was just YouTube. It's called the Lottie-Dottie Chicken in English, but I don't think it's as well known. Like in Brazil, everybody knows what the Galinha Pintadinha is.
Galinha Pintadinha is very famous here in Brazil, maybe not that famous in the USA, but what I really watch with Mateus, my son, is super simple songs, because then the songs are in English, so because I want to practice. And now, and they are traditional in the USA, like row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. So imagine they even have some translations to Portuguese, but it doesn't work that much. I don't like the translations in Portuguese.
Rema, carinhosamente mar adentro.
Rain, rain, go away, come again another day. In Português is chuva, chuva, vai embora, volte outra hora. Volte uma outra hora. So it works.
Yes. There are some songs that are much easier. And it's funny, like the songs that are easy, it like happens in a minute. And then there's other songs that I was like, like sitting there, like waiting for the words to come, the rhymes, like, come on, something's, but you just got to put it all out on paper, lots of different ideas, and see what fits. But it's really fun. It's very fun.
Well, how about that? And still talking about YouTube, Jackie, what has changed from the time you started your channel up to now?
A lot.
How do you see English teaching channels nowadays?
Okay, so CARINA started before me. I think I've been on YouTube for maybe 4 years. I think about 4 years.
Me, 7 years.
Yeah, no, but that's amazing. And
I'm a granny.
You're not a granny. But I think at the beginning, at least from what I've noticed, and I know, CARINA, you and I have talked about this too, there wasn't as much competition. You know, there were a few English channels focused on the Brazilian Portuguese speaking population, and I feel like the competition now is much bigger. Like there's a lot of like really fantastic channels. Editing, like I look back at my old videos, if I were to start doing that now, it would not be good. But I feel like the competition just wasn't as great maybe back then. And now you have to really have like great editing, great sound quality. You have to be quick. You can't explain things too slowly. I think people's attention spans have gotten shorter. And the one thing that we've talked about is unfortunately, it's not really the content that's important. It's like the title and the thumbnail. So sometimes people get a little bit crazy with their, like, don't say thank you, or
Stop saying how are you.
Stop saying how are you. How dare
and speak
you?
Proper English.
No, I'm like, what?
No one says how are you.
I know. And what's sad about that is it works. I've been guilty of doing things that are probably a little bit clickbaity, but I try to do it in things that are like actual, for real, like don't say this in this situation. But it is hard because you don't want to be a person who does things just for the views and just for the clicks, but otherwise you kind of don't stand out as much, especially at the beginning.
If you were asked what's the secret, I mean, obviously it's difficult to say, well, this is the secret for having an outstanding YouTube channel. No, I think that one of the things that probably will put your YouTube channel there, right, on display is doing it without worrying about numbers. At least in the beginning of that. I mean, you're doing something that you believe, whether it will give you a number or not. I mean, obviously numbers are important. I'm not saying that they're not important, but if you tend to think about that like all the time, you lose your focus, right?
Yes.
It has happened to me,
Yeah.
okay? I just want to say that I've been on YouTube for 7 years. I've started thinking about, okay, so there are so many new channels, I have to stand out again. So what can I do? So I started overthinking about titles all the time and maybe not thinking too much about the content itself. I've always tried to connect both things, okay? So we have a good title and good content, of course. But I feel like I've kind of lost myself.
No,
in
but
the
I am
process
super
somehow.
worried about my numbers. I am super worried
So?
about my numbers. Look who's talking, right? I am super worried. But I think that I should be not so worried, probably.
It's hard. It is hard because to me, like I've been in that situation too. You get in that comparison trap. Like, oh my goodness, we posted the same video and this person has 100,000 and I have 2. But I do agree with you, Fabio, in the fact that if we can really try our best to let go of it and just focus on producing good content that we think our public will like. Who cares if there's 10 or if there's 10 million? And they have shown like views and engagement, it doesn't necessarily mean sales. Like if you have a product that you're trying to sell, sometimes it works against you to have like a viral video, because sometimes it may be viral because a lot of people are, fighting in the comments, or it's kind of a polemic topic. But I'm at the stage now, like I've never had the goal of being a YouTuber. That was never even like part of my plans. Like, to me, YouTube was free marketing. So I don't rely on my income for YouTube. I mean, if I get it, that's great, but I don't make much money from YouTube. I care more about a course. So I want to have a reputation as being someone a little bit, not serious in the intimidating way, but someone who's serious in the fact that I'm not going to do stupid titles or talk about things just to go viral. But it's been tempting. I remember when I first started out, you so badly just want to grow, want to be seen, that you consider doing things like that. And I'm very glad I didn't do it that much, because our reputation, and that's something I think so many people need to remember, it takes a very, very long time to build up your reputation, and it can be destroyed in a minute. So who cares if your engagement isn't as great as whatever, Fulano, who's saying, don't say, shut up. But you need to sell courses, and you may be doing better sales, you may have a better reputation, and you're also making your students feel good, or not your students, your followers, your subscribers, you're helping them. If you get people saying, oh my goodness, thank you so much, I've had this question in my head for so long, and now I finally understand, like, that means everything.
That's why we started, right? Because we wanted to share. Of course, you started because you also wanted to have a course. But okay, this is why I started. And that's what I try to remind myself all the time. Because I've always had a mission, a clear mission. And numbers are not more important than my mission. So that's what I try to remind myself all the time.
Perfect. Exactly. And it's kind of like, if you really love doing it, you don't really care that much if you're making a lot of money or if you're getting a lot of subscribers or a lot of views, because you're enjoying the process, like we were talking about before. And that's, I think, even like really good business advice. You know, anyone who wants to go into business, if you're doing it just to make money, but you don't really like what you're doing, you're going to have a really hard time, because you're going to have to go through a lot of obstacles and deal with a lot of problems that you maybe didn't expect. And if you don't love what you're doing, if you're not doing it for the pleasure of it, the joy of it, you're going to quit very quickly. But it's hard to maintain that. Sometimes we kind of feel like we're not as excited about it as we were before. It kind of comes in waves. But yeah, we've had lots of talks about these viral videos.
Jackie, do you think it is like more difficult for teachers to grow on YouTube nowadays? And do you believe that being an American teacher, like the native, you were a native teacher, do you think this helped you or not?
Okay, yes and yes to both of those questions. Yeah, so I would say it is harder, because I just feel like there's a lot more competition. So, in the past, there were just a few well-known channels. Now, if you were to say, what are, the biggest YouTube channels, you'd probably have like a list of 50, or I don't even know. There's so many. And we don't just have YouTube anymore. We have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have like all these other social medias that are coming out. So I do think it's harder because of the competition, and you see a lot more talent. Like, some people are like really funny, like they're really good in front of the camera, they sing and dance, and I don't know, they're like amazing. I do also think, I know it is an advantage for me being American, being from the US, and also speaking Portuguese, because there are a lot of other American teachers that teach entirely in English, and they can have people from all over the world. But I do think it helps that I can also explain in Portuguese. I understand why students are making the mistakes that they're making. Usually it's because they're saying how they would say it in Portuguese. But it's definitely an advantage. People don't like question me if I'm right or wrong. And I make mistakes in English all the time. Like, it's normal. We don't speak perfectly. But no one is going to like attack me in the comments if I made a grammar mistake.
If we make a mistake.
She's a fake. Come on.
Yeah. So yes and yes to both of those questions for sure.
Jackie, being an English teacher and having lots of Brazilian students as you do, have you ever had that saudade dilemma or saudade controversy? You know what I'm talking about?
Where people want to know like the English word for every word in Portuguese, and a lot of times there aren't translations.
This idea that, saudade is a word that only exist in Portuguese.
And they always say that Portuguese is the hardest language ever. It's the most complex language in the world. That's what Brazilians say.
Yeah, I was like, I'm sure there's other languages that are
of course.
far more complex.
All languages are equally complex. So the more different it is from your language, the more difficult it's going to be.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
Spanish is easier for us. But maybe for a Chinese speaker, Spanish is going to be very hard.
Coming back to the Saudade Gate.
Yes, Saudade Gate. So your question is basically like, what do I do when students want to translate?
Because people don't understand. They think that there is no word or equivalent in English for saudade.
Okay. So there are words that there's not like an exact translation. I mean, you could find a literal translation for a lot of things. You can look up the word in the dictionary. And for example, nostalgia is probably the word you will find for saudade.
Longing
but
also, I've heard something about
longing.
that. Longing.
Yeah, but we don't use those words very frequently. Or, I mean, I don't think I've ever used the word nostalgia or longing. Like ever, maybe once in my life. In saudade, you use that word all the time, every single day, probably. It's a very common response when someone sends you a picture of something from a while ago or you haven't seen someone. It's just used constantly. And there's a lot of expressions like that like slang expressions and...
Like saudade, gambiarra, cafuné. So many words. Right? Chulé.
Chulé, I know. I had to do that. O sapo da galinha pintadinha. Que chulé!
Como é que ficou? O sapo não lava o pé.
With stinky feet.
Stinky
With
feet.
feet.
Ah, não. Canta pra gente. Como é que ficou? The
frog doesn't
wash
wash his feet. He thinks that they smell so sweet. He lives in a big lagoon with smelly feet that don't smell sweet. Algo assim, eu não lembro exatamente.
Okay.
I could have done that better myself. Wow, that's perfect. Hey, and there are words obviously in English that has the same situation.
Yes.
For example, commuting.
Yeah.
Right? We don't use that in Portuguese, right? To commute.
Right. To commute, and we use commute even as a noun. Like, the morning commute today is about 40 minutes from this highway to this highway. Yeah, there's a lot of things. That's why language, I think it's not black or white. And so many people that have like kind of like that math mind, it can really help you because there are formulas and structures that are really helpful, especially when you want to learn how to conjugate verbs and structure sentences correctly. But if you're not a little bit flexible, it can really make you frustrated because there's times we learn something and then there's a million exceptions. And that's just, and language changes too. It changes all the time. Things that I read even in grammar books and stuff like that, I'm like, yes, this is correct. It's good to know for a proficiency test, but 99.9% of the people aren't going to speak like this. You know, and Portuguese is the same way. I remember when I learned Portuguese, I studied the grammar. But then what I heard on the street and what I listened to was totally different in a lot of ways. So,
Olá, como vai? We don't say that. Stop saying como vai.
Yeah.
Don't be a robot.
I know. There's so much stuff.
This would be my title for a video teaching Portuguese.
Really?
Não diga como vai.
Yes.
Yeah, once I...
Errou.
A little more than 1 year ago, I tweeted something that was a little controversial. The name was "Don't Say Home Office," right? Because of course we know home office is the place in your house where you do your things, where you work, where you study. And then I was saying, you don't say, "I am doing home office. I'm working from home," and that's it. I was very attacked those days.
I'm not attacking you, but I've done some research about the use of home office. It's not common in the USA, not common in Britain, but it is used in Australia. And New
But the
Zealand.
Australians are wrong.
Fabio's right. All the
They don't
Australians are
speak
wrong.
English.
They don't speak English. So let's
Yes.
not consider
They say
them.
good day. They don't say good morning, for God's sake.
Hello, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is used. It's possible, but it's not common at all.
Exactly. And that's what's so hard. And I think a lot of us, when we start out with like our channels and teaching, we say things based on the knowledge that we have. But there's been a lot of times where something that sounds wrong to me or strange to me, I've never heard that before, I've made that mistake of making that generalization, like, no, you shouldn't say it like that, or that's not the correct pronunciation. And then, oh, what was it? Someone, I can't even remember what it was.
So, and more or less? No?
No, it was like a pronunciation thing. It was a pronunciation thing that I was like correcting somebody's pronunciation in a video. And then another person from England told me, oh, how funny. I say it, that way. And I was like, really? Okay, well, good. We learn.
Yeah,
but now
great.
I've become more careful to be like, my pronunciation with my accent.
Yeah, in American English. So I remember once I was saying, the name of my video was Não Diga Use. Because I was trying to be clickbait. Like having a clickbaiting
Use.
title. And then the Irish say use. And I said, no, come on.
I know.
Are you serious?
I know.
I wonder if it come like a British fella would come and say, I think you were saying schedule wrong.
Right.
We don't say scheduled up here. We say schedule.
Schedule. Yeah. My schedule.
Yeah.
Let me check my schedule.
Say timetable, for God's sake. Yeah.
I know.
YouTube. They say YouTube.
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah. No, and even the TH, there, places they say it like an F. Like I think, rather than I think. And they're native speakers that say it like that.
Yeah, in Manchester they say I think. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm absolutely
I think
sure.
even in London, I think
Do they?
people who speak Cockney English,
They have
would
4
say
different
F.
accents in London, right? Something
And
like
the
that.
Irish would say a T sound, I think.
Yes.
So, you see?
But even in Brazil, like if you think about Brazil, like the word porta, if you were to go around Brazil asking people to say that one word, you would hear a lot of variations just in the word porta. Be porta. I don't know, in Porto Alegre, how do you guys say it?
Porta.
You go to the Northeast, it's probably something different too.
Porta.
So there you go. So we have to take that into consideration.
Okay, so we've talked about YouTube, we've talked about your experiences in Brazil, and now I'm very curious to know a little bit more about your kids, but talking about the way you're raising them to be bilingual. How does this work? Do you have any tips for people who are interested in learning more about raising bilingual kids or raising their kids bilingual?
Yes, and I guess the first thing I'd like to say is it's much harder than I expected it to be. I assumed that I speak English, my kids will speak English. So, and just to give a little bit of a backstory for people who don't know, well, my oldest son, he was born in the US, but when he was 6 weeks old, I brought him back to Brazil. So my kids, the first 7 years of his life were in Brazil, and my youngest, the first 4 years of his life were in Brazil. And my second was born in Brazil. And they never went to bilingual schools. I speak Portuguese with my husband. Like, it was 100% Portuguese, except for me. They didn't even hear me speaking English with anybody unless I was on the phone with someone from my family. So it was really challenging for me to teach them English because their whole world was in Portuguese. And with Gabriel, my oldest, I remember there was a period of time, and I think it depends on a child's personality too, but there was a time where I would tell him like, oh, look, a frog. And he'd be like, no, I'm sapo. He would like try to argue with me about things. And I'd be like, oh. And a friend of mine that I met when I was pregnant, she was there and she had a daughter that was 5. And I remember her telling me this, and I'm so glad she did because it was the best advice ever. And she said, Jackie, your kids are not going to want to speak English, and you have to be firm. You have to act like you don't understand them if they don't speak English with you. And you can't just speak to them in English. They have to respond to you in English. And I remember, okay. That literally was like the best advice ever because, of course, I wouldn't ignore him, but I would correct him. If he said, mamãe, eu quero milk. It was like this mixture of things. Põe shoes, está cold. He was kind of like conjugating the verbs in Portuguese and inserting words in English. And I would say, oh, do you want milk? Okay, you need to say, mamãe, I want milk. Or put on my shoes. I had to force him to really speak in English. And it didn't take long for that switch to flip. And then he realized, like, oh, okay, I can't speak the same language that I speak with everybody else with my mom. I have to speak a different language. It took like 3 days of me, like...
That was really quick.
It was super fast because he knew it. He just wasn't forced to speak it, and he was kind of mixing it all. And then he would switch. He would go back and forth, of course, with lots of mistakes and mixing things here and there. But it was the best thing ever, because then he just associated me, like that one person, one language method that I think is fantastic, because with kids, if they don't have to speak a language, they're not going to be highly motivated to speak it. Even if they're really interested in it, if they think it's really cute, I love English, but if they don't have to speak it, they're probably not going to. So if you have a person that represents that language, like I am the English reference here, and for me, of course, it was much more natural. Like, it's my language. I want to speak with them in English. It's just feels right. Then they know, like, okay, with this person and all these other people I speak Portuguese, and with these people I speak English. And also what helped us a lot was the trips to the US. We traveled back to the US pretty much every year. There was one year we couldn't go because my mom was sick, but other than that, like when we arrived in Chicago, no one in my family knows anything. They don't even know oi. So the kids had to really, they were immersed for a few weeks during that time, which was really helpful.
And did they automatically start speaking English when they got to the USA?
No. They didn't, like, well, Leo was so different. Each child is so different. So Gabriel's the oldest. He was like, I would say it was like the hardest for him to just understand that there were two different languages. I feel like he just didn't get it for a really long time, that there was a separation of languages. But when we first came to the US, he was speaking with my parents in Portuguese. He was really little. He was like 3. And I remember my mom gave him a bath, and I just remember hearing her say, I don't understand you. You need to speak in English. And he's just like, just talking. And with my dad, he grabbed a ball and he was like, shoot the grandpa, shoot the ball. And my dad's like, I don't know what you're saying. But then it literally like switched. There was a day, my parents to this day still talk about it. The first like day or two, he would talk to me in English, but he didn't understand that my parents were also English speaking people. And then he kind of got it. And then he switched over.
You were the only reference.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's
so it was like my mom's the weird one that speaks this language that nobody else does. And then it was like, oh, grandma and grandpa, my aunt and uncle, everybody else in the US does as well. And I always put them in like summer camps or art classes, like things with other kids as much as possible to really try to immerse them, especially when they were really little, like 3 years old. Even if they don't speak that well, they're just playing, and kids don't care that much. As they get older, they begin to care a lot more. But with Leo, my second, it was so easy. He just did whatever Gabriel did. So there was never a period of time like where he didn't want to speak with me in English. It was like he was born and just like followed his brother. He just did everything that Gabriel did, and he just knew. Talk with my mom in English, talk with my dad and other people in Portuguese. And when we moved back here, they both spoke English well, but not like kids who've been going to school here, for 7 years or 4 years.
How old are they now? 7 and 4?
Yeah, they were 7 and 4 when we moved. Now they're 10 and 6. But when we moved here, what was great, what I love about living in Florida is that it's like little Brazil. There's a lot of Brazilians here. So we have a lot of people around us that speak in Portuguese, which is great because I don't want them to lose it. I know that if we don't force the Portuguese on them, they will lose it. It's like a fact. And my husband still speaks with them in Portuguese. The youngest one, we have him doing tutoring every week so that he learns how to read and write in Portuguese. He can speak it, but he's making mistakes. He's definitely losing it a little bit, and he never was alphabetized. So we're doing that. I put our Alexa in Portuguese. They have to talk to Alexa in Portuguese. There's friends who come over, but it's something that it's very hard. It's really hard. You have to really maintain it somehow and keep the kids going with it. Otherwise, they'll lose it. And us moving here, they could easily lose the Portuguese if we don't force it on them. So...
That's nice to hear you, because I know it's worth it. But I've been trying to speak English with Mateus, my son. He's a year and 9 months now, and he doesn't speak yet. So he's just saying papa, mama, but he understands some words in English. So where's the frog? He points at the frog. Where's the butterfly? He points at the butterfly. So and he can also understand cadê a borboleta. So he has those two languages in his head. But you know what's happening to me? As he's taking some time to start speaking, I'm starting to speak less in English with him, because for me, in my mom head, I think that sometimes I have to make it easier for him, because other kids his age can already speak better than he can now. So we are always struggling with something as mothers, right? Because we never know what to do.
It's really hard, and I think we compare, each kid is on their own timeline. Both my kids took a long time to speak, especially Gabriel, the oldest. I remember he was in a daycare, and they actually sent a letter home to me telling me to stop speaking with him in English because he was like mute and all the other kids were talking, and both of them even like stuttered when they started speaking. They couldn't formulate the words. They had a really hard time. But I knew, I'm like, if I don't speak to him in English, he'll never learn, and I need him, and my parents will kill me if they're grandchild, if they can't communicate. And I'm like, he's capable. He's just going to take longer. And it's true. They took a longer period of time to be able to speak, but there's a lot going on. And there's been a lot of studies done, like kids who grow up in bilingual homes, especially babies, when they're going through that stage of development where they're learning how to communicate, they're using their brains so much more than a monolingual baby, because for every object there's two words. It's not just apple, it's maçã as well. So they have to decide, first of all, what word do I use? Who am I talking to? There's just so much more going on, but it's actually really good for them because they get used to dealing with that frustration from a young age, which is good. It's good for our kids to be frustrated. Like, that's good for them. They need to learn that I'm going to be frustrated and I'm going to get over it, and it's not the end of the world. It's better for them to learn that when they're really little than when they're adults or teenagers going through it for the first time. And also, their brains actually are working in a lot. I don't even know the whole neuroscience behind it, but they're using their brains a lot more. They're forcing their brains to work a lot more. So then when they have other difficult things to do, they're more capable of taking those on. They're not going to quit so easily. So I think, Carina, in your situation, it is hard to teach a child a language that's not your first language. It would be really difficult for me, for example, to raise my kids speaking Portuguese if my husband, were American. But there's other things that you can do. He could go to, a bilingual school. You could maybe have a babysitter that speaks English with him, or there's a lot of different things that can be done. You speak English and you didn't grow up with that. Fabio too. Exactly. I didn't know a single word of Portuguese until I was 28 years old. I didn't even know what oi was. Like, we're not doomed if we don't grow up.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are different learning styles. There are different paths. So I'm doing my best here. I don't speak in English all the time because it just doesn't feel natural for me. But I'm doing my best. And I think it's going to be easier for him to learn English when he goes to a bilingual school than if I didn't speak to him in English, if I never spoke to him in English. So I think it will help somehow.
Yeah, and the TV, cartoons, all that stuff that he enjoys watching, that's like that's a lot of input he's getting, and he's engaged in it and likes, he can sing along maybe if he wants to. But yeah, he's doing fine. And I think when we put so much pressure on them, like we worry, oh, you're behind fulano at school, like, He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Yeah.
So now let's come back to português. Gostou?
Ok.
O negócio é mesclar aqui, sacou? Essa é a grande coisa. Pois é, eu não sei tu, Carina, mas eu tenho a impressão que a gente poderia ficar umas 4 horas aqui conversando e a gente não ia sentir o tempo passar. Porque o papo tá super bom.
A Jack, toda vez que a gente conversa, a gente tem muito assunto. A gente conversa muito sobre produção de conteúdo, sobre trabalho, mas também sobre vida. Porque a Jack é uma pessoa que tá sempre tentando o melhor dela, sabe? Ela tá sempre lendo sobre desenvolvimento pessoal, motivação, organização. Eu tinha outras perguntas aqui que nem deu tempo de fazer, no sentido de... Essa questão é muito louca. Não sei como é que o Fábio, ele é um heavy user de social media. Eu vejo ele sempre... eu te acho. Tu tá sempre online. Se ele me manda um WhatsApp e eu não respondo em 5 minutos, ele tem um colapso. E eu quero ficar longe do meu celular. Eu quero cada vez mais ficar longe. Só que eu trabalho com a internet.
Pois
é muito louco, sabe? Eu sei, mas eu não aguento. Eu tô me sentindo engolida pelas redes sociais há muito tempo. E a Jack, eu sinto que... Eu sei que também. Porque a gente fala muito sobre isso. Gente, eu quero ficar offline. Eu quero ficar aqui, sei lá, lendo um livro. E as redes sociais, às vezes, engolem a gente de um jeito que eu não consigo ler 3 páginas que eu sinto que eu tenho que ver a notificação. Então, eu acho que a rede social é horrível, eu não quero.
Eu não consigo, eu devo ter uma pilha de livros que eu preciso colocar em dia minhas leituras, que eu tô louco pra ler. Tem um amigo meu que adora o nosso podcast, Daniel Escola, aqui de Porto Alegre, que ele fala assim... Daniel School. Eu já perguntei pra ele, cara, pelo amor de Deus, tu tem 2 filhas pequenas em casa, tu é jornalista, tu acorda super cedo. Como é que tu consegue ler tanto? Eu não entendo como é que ele consegue. Ele tem um podcast também, então ele fala, tipo assim, é um podcast semanal e ele fala sobre livros e uma série que eles estão acompanhando. Eu falei, cara, tu é 2, né? Perguntei pra ele. Tu é 2 pessoas, não é possível.
Tempo. Não, a gente tem tempo. A gente gasta o nosso tempo nas coisas erradas. E essa porcaria desse celular, na minha opinião.
Parece a minha mãe, cara.
Essa é a minha opinião. Eu virei uma véia reclamona. Pronto, agora que eu sou mãe, eu virei uma véia. Grumpy véia.
Eu não posso dizer, minha mãe tá assim. A minha mãe veio aqui em casa às 10 da noite pra eu arrumar o celular dela que não tava funcionando. Eu sou mãe, tu não pode ficar até amanhã?
Gente, meu pai fica o tempo inteiro olhando o vídeo.
E vê as crianças. Isso, na verdade, eu acho que eu me controlo muito mais por causa das crianças. Se eu estou falando para eles, eles não podem ficar no iPad, eles nem têm celulares, nada disso. Mas se eu estou falando para eles que eles não podem ficar nos eletrônicos e eu estou no eletrônico o dia inteiro...
Que moral a gente vai ter, né? Que moral a gente vai ter.
É uma coisa, eu não fico bem. Se eu fico muito tempo nas mídias sociais, é uma coisa que me dá um pouco de ansiedade. Eu preciso de bastante tempo desligada, sem saber desse mundo virtual. A gente esquece de viver no mundo real. Eu sinto que, tipo, 2 vidas. Eu tenho 2 vidas. Estou aqui, presente, mas se estou gravando, se estou aqui, eu posso estar aqui e no celular. Eu não estou aqui na vida real. Eu estou no meu celular. Falando com pessoas que nem conheço, comparando com situações que nem são reais, porque está tudo falsificado, mentira, só mostrando o que a gente quer mostrar, perfeição, que não existe.
Eu, por exemplo, não apareço no Instagram se eu não tô com um filtrinho de pele, pelo menos. Porque eu tô sempre com uma cara de mãe cansada, então assim, não, vou botar um filtrinho.
Senhoras e senhores, eis o segredo da beleza de Carina Fragozo, ela acabou de entregar. É tudo com filtro, é fake.
É filtro.
Eu também.
Mas o YouTube não tem, então o YouTube é minha cara de verdade.
É verdade. Mas é com bastante luz, maquiagem, todas essas coisas. Que ajuda. Mas é bem difícil. Eu sinto falta. Eu falo muito com meus filhos sobre nossa época. Eu sinto tipo a avó contando sobre a época dos dinossauros. Quando a gente não tinha celular. Ou tinha celular, mas o celular não tinha internet. Você mandava mensagem, tipo, vamos encontrar nesse lugar. E todo mundo se encontrava e ficava lá presente, conversando um com o outro. Não todo mundo junto, mas ninguém está presente.
Uma coisa horrível. Isso tem me incomodado muito, muito, muito. Eu tenho assistido a muitos vídeos de pessoas assim, fiquei 1 mês sem redes sociais, como me senti? Todo mundo disse, foi bom, eu consigo, mas eu trabalho com internet.
1 mês, Carina?
Eu fico, juro pra ti, eu deleto o Facebook agora, o Instagram agora, eu deleto tudo. Eu deleto. Só que daí, imagina...
Quem é que vai tomar conta do lojinha daí?
Quem é que vai tomar conta do English em Brasil? Não dá, porque eu trabalho online. Não dá, né? Mas eu tô dizendo pra ti, eu tô tão sufocada de rede social e não tem nada a ver com a minha audiência. Por favor, quem tá me assistindo não quer dizer que eu não gosto do meu trabalho. Amo, gente,
disclaimer,
amo vocês.
disclaimer!
Não vão embora. Mas assim, a rede social, o vício, isso tá demais. E eu acho que pra desviciar tem que sair total, por um tempo.
Mas isso é mais fácil.
4 dias.
Mas isso é mais fácil pra quem não trabalha com as redes sociais. Se tu é puramente um usuário, isso é muito mais fácil. Agora, se tu tem atividade forte nas redes, isso complica. Mas eu entendo teu ponto, é complicado.
Não, o ano passado, em março, quando o Covid tava, tipo, todo mundo, meu Deus do céu, o que está acontecendo nesse mundo? A minha conta no Instagram foi hackeada. E eu acho que nem chegou a ser um mês, mas uns 3 semanas por aí, sem a minha conta. Mas sabe que eu não fiquei desesperada.
Não. Então é isso, eu e a Jack somos muito parecidas.
Claro, eu fiquei meio chateada, tipo, puxa, é meu negócio, tem muita gente, tem muito tempo produzindo conteúdo, uma coisa assim, mas eu também, com tudo que estava acontecendo no mundo, eu estava, meu Deus, nem dá para entender o que está acontecendo com esse vírus que parece que está espalhando, matando um monte de gente. Eu estava tipo, meu Deus, eu não sei o que vai acontecer nesse mundo, tô nem aí para essa conta. Quero viver a vida, olhar para as estrelas, andar à noite.
É uma desintoxicação, né?
Eu acho que a pandemia nos trouxe um pouquinho disso, assim, né? Essa coisa assim. Cara, o que eu quero? Eu quero só sobreviver. Sabe? Honestamente. E que meus familiares não morram nessa pandemia, sabe? É isso que eu cada vez penso mais, sabe? Eu só quero passar por isso. Vai completar 2 anos aqui no Brasil, tá mais complicado do que aí na Flórida. Eu sei que aí tá bem mais tranquilo.
Eu sei.
Mas assim, são 2 anos das nossas vidas que a gente nunca mais vai esquecer. Porque são anos muito pesados.
A gente está testemunhando a história de uma maneira absolutamente dolorida, mas a gente está testemunhando uma coisa muito vultuosa na história.
Muito. E aqui no Brasil, todo mundo conhece alguém que morreu. Todo mundo. Gente, a gente está perdendo gente. Isso é muito absurdo. Mas não vamos terminar nessa tristeza,
não vamos terminar nessa astral, não.
Pra ver isso, você vê as notícias, você entra no Twitter, você se irrita, você briga com seus políticos. Aqui a gente está tentando dar esse respiro, né, pra você não pensar nisso. É inevitável a gente falar sobre isso às vezes, porque estamos vivendo isso. Mas, Jack, só pra finalizar, me conta aí, sei lá, 1 ou 2 podcasts in English, que eu sei que tu consome muito essa coisa de desenvolvimento pessoal. Enfim, qualquer assunto. Que podcast tu recomendaria aqui pra audiência?
Nossa, eu escuto muitos podcasts. 2 que eu gosto bastante é Impact Theory. Ele faz entrevistas com várias pessoas diferentes. Eu achei muito legal. Armchair Expert. Ele é muito engraçado e também é um podcast sobre entrevistas com famosos, várias pessoas diferentes. Eu também gosto do Lewis Howes, ele tem School of Greatness. Mas são entrevistas com pessoas que têm histórias bem legais. É uma coisa que sempre me deixa inspirada. Então, eu gosto de ouvir esse tipo de coisa, mas eu escuto muita coisa diferente. Sobre política, crime, essas histórias que eles ainda estão tentando descobrir quem matou quem. Várias coisas diferentes.
Adoro.
Coisas de espiritismo, meditação. Eu consumo muito áudio mesmo.
Legal,
gosto.
Interessante, né, Fábio, ela mencionar isso do crime, porque no Way Ahead, que é um dos programas que a gente tem aqui, o Fábio faz muito isso, ele fala muito sobre cold cases, né? Conta aí pra quem não acompanha, quem tá de repente aqui no YouTube e que não sabe do nosso podcast. Aproveitar aqui e falar do Way Ahead.
Ok, temos outros 2 podcasts do English in Brasil, que é Way Ahead, que é pra galera um pouquinho do intermediário, um pouquinho mais pra cima, que já se permite ouvir uma coisa inteiramente em inglês, embora no finalzinho eu fale alguma coisa em português para recuperar alguma coisa do vocabulário. E eu gosto muito de falar sobre cold cases, crimes que não foram resolvidos ainda, coisas super misteriosas, porque isso aí eu acredito que atrai muito mais a atenção da pessoa quando tá ouvindo alguma coisa. O outro podcast, que é o Starting Up, como o próprio nome diz, Starting Up, para quem tá começando, para quem tá dando os primeiros passos no aprendizado de inglês, com aquelas dicas mais básicas e que são muito importantes. E também o nosso do Blá Blá Spot, que é o que a gente tem aqui comigo e a Carina, sempre com alguém muito especial para ajudar a brilhantar este programa maravilhoso.
Jack, thank you so much. A gente conversaria 3 horas contigo. Muito obrigada.
Eu sei, não quero acabar, não.
A gente pode te chamar depois para um outro programa. Então a gente pega todos os assuntos que não deu tempo de falar, a gente conversa contigo depois.
Perfeito.
Pessoal,
Certo.
acompanhem o canal da Jack, o Instagram da Jack. Olha, eu misturei inglês com português. Instagram. O
Instagram.
da Jack, porque ela tem conteúdo muito valioso, muito, muito bom. Eu aprendo muito com ela. Então, Jack, muito obrigada.
Gente.
Espero
Eu que
ter se
agradeço,
divertido.
foi muito bom. Foi ótimo, muito bom. Muito obrigada,
E a gente se vê, então,
Amei.
pessoal, nos próximos episódios. Um beijão.
See you, bye bye.
Bye, guys!